Here is my recap on Dexter Season 3, Episode 8, entitled The Damage a Man Can Do. There's a lot going on in this episode. It seems like that with every episode, but this one's a little more confined. We've got a few storylines going. We've got Batista, who is still dating that undercover cop, and at one point during this episode, he had a date with her, but couldn't go because he gets piled on with a lot of work there at the office, at the police department, and he has to call, and he leaves this really awkward message for her, and he's stuck there all day, and he's been trying to get a hold of her for the rest of the day to see if she got the message. Well, she shows up that night when he's sitting there totally freaked out that she's not going to pay attention to him anymore, that message may have gotten her to scare her away, and she shows up with dinner, and they have dinner there at the police department, and she says, she listened to it over and over again that day, and it cracked her up. We also have Dexter and Rita and them dealing with their upcoming marriage, the birth of their baby. Her hormones are just raging in this episode. That's how the episode kind of starts, with Dexter making lunch for her two kids, and she's upset that there's none of this, none of that, none of this. She's upset at the mess he's making there in the kitchen, and is really upset that he hasn't gotten the rings yet. And, at the end of this episode, he finally gives her the ring at the very end of the episode and lets her know that he is there for the long haul. We also have the story of the killer that's been going around skinning people, the Skinner. And they start calling in the tree trimmers from, the first, well, not just the first episode, but tree trimmers there in the Miami area. And the police department is abuzz with all of these people coming in being questioned. They bring in the guy that was in the very first episode of this season. They bring him in and talk to him, and he's very candid with them and says, I'll get you guys anything you need. And he says that there is one person on his crew that they should look at who has actually been, he was not convicted of a crime. He was, they think he killed somebody. And so he said, you might want to look at this guy because the police have tried to get him before and he runs. So he goes, I know exactly where he's going to be tomorrow. You guys can go, down there and meet him. Deborah actually does go get this guy with Quinn the next day at that particular park where he's being held. They bring him in for questioning, and he gets freaked out. He's like, if I can't do this with you guys, I have a wife, a son, and my kids will be, I'll end up going back to Mexico. This isn't good. And he starts mentioning that his boss, the guy that they had talked to earlier who gave him his name, that real bad things are going to happen if he finds out about this. And he gets freaked out. He's more afraid of his boss than he is of the police department. And that makes them think something weird is going on. At the same time, we have the CI that they have been using. He's still the mark to get the Skinner to come out. And in this episode, it starts with Deborah at his house. They slept together. She says, I'm going to get some compensation for you. And she needs his number. She wants to see if she can kind of get him out of his CI thing. So his contract with the police department so that he's not in danger anymore. And she inquires about the number on his checks. And he's like, I don't get checks from the police department. Come to find out, Quinn's been in charge of that. Quinn has been giving him cash under the table and not above board. So he's not really officially there. And Quinn had promised him, you can work down what you got convicted of so that you don't, well, he wasn't convicted, but his charges so that he doesn't get convicted and eventually they'll go away. Well, Deborah makes it so that he's out of his contract. She clears it up, tells Quinn she's not going to allow him to do this anymore, and lets the CI go. Well, right after that, the CI disappears, and she can't find him. And in the very last part of this episode, she actually goes in at night to his apartment. He's been missing for days, and she can't find, she sees nothing of him there. She freaks out and goes outside and notices that his palm trees had just been trimmed, which is just his in that complex, just the ones in front of his apartment. And that freaks her out, thinking that he's dead. Now, we've also got the big storyline of this episode, which is Dexter and Miguel Prado. Miguel actually meets up with Dexter and says there's a guy he actually wants to kill. He's an ex-NFL player, and he was convicted of some murders. And he he wasn't convicted. He got away. He got away with it. And he said, I had to tell these families our hands were tied. There's nothing we could do. that they had to let him go. And he says, I want to go after this guy. Dexter says, well, that kind of goes against everything I believe. He brings up his code. Doesn't tell Miguel what his code is, but kind of alludes to his code. And Miguel's very curious about that, but he says, no, you don't understand. I want to do it. I want to learn how to do this. So this episode is kind of them teaming up. Dexter's teaching him what he needs to do. They go watch his habits. They see what he does. They go into his home. They find records of things and prove that he did do these murders. And at one point, Dexter's father, his dark passenger, shows up and says, you shouldn't be doing this. Don't go on this journey. You can actually end it now by not giving him the information he needs and acting like you didn't find it, and you can kind of do this thing on your own without him. Dexter, specifically on purpose, goes against his father and gives that information to Miguel. And they do go after this guy and find out he's got problems with gambling. So that's when they go to a casino. They see that he's, has issues with gambling, and they follow him. They're getting ready to do the kill, so they set up the kill room, and they're going to apprehend this character. His name was Billy. And when they go there, he's at a casino. All three of them are lined up watching a game, and they were getting ready to abduct him, and they follow him out. And that's when one of the workers there at that casino or bar recognizes Miguel Prado, and that's when Dexter says, this is off. We're not doing this. And he tells him like 3 other times that we're not doing this. Miguel gets upset with this and says, I want to do it together. And that's when he tells him a story of how he had pushed somebody down these stairs one time, and it kind of gave him a rush. He wants to let that part of himself out. He wants to do this. So Dexter reluctantly does agree. They do get him safely at the kill site, and that's when Dexter gives Miguel Prado the knife and lets him do the deed. So we do see Miguel Prado kill him, and Dexter's, he's got this look of kind of excitement in his eyes and asks, Miguel Prado, how did it feel? And Miguel was in heaven. He loved doing that. And the very last scene of this episode gets a little crazy because he shows up at that defense attorney's house. There's a knock on, you can see he's going to knock on somebody's door. And, it led me to believe that he's maybe going back to that family saying, hey, he's been taken care of. But no, this was that other district attorney who has been going after him and trying to take him down. And he shows up at her apartment, which is going to get sparks to fly. So we're going to see what happens in the next episode. Again, if you like these recaps, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I will be reviewing or recapping every single episode of Dexter leading up to Season 9 that's going to be on Showtime later this year in 2021. And this is going to give you guys a way to watch and actually go through recaps of every season without having to watch the show, get it condensed so you can get the basic information and not be left behind. So that's all I've got for you in this particular recap. I will be doing the next one shortly. I do appreciate the support.